When we first got married, my wife, Claire Sterling, said, only a sexless marriage can truly prove the purity of our love. But just 3 years later, I found an ultrasound report in her purse. I'm so sorry, Ethan. I've defiled our love. We should get a divorce, she told me. It was only then that I learned she'd had someone else on the side for a long time. In the hollow silence of our bedroom, I sat alone on the edge of the bed, the ultrasound report in my hand, a bitter cocktail of emotions churning in my gut. A wife's pregnancy should be a happy event, but ours was a sexless marriage. Did I have the power to make her pregnant through sheer willpower? Of course not. And just like that, the cuckold hat landed squarely on my head. Ethan, have you found my phone yet? Claire called out. Oh, got it. I answered, hurrying toward the bathroom. I'd found a report while searching her purse for her phone. The exam was yesterday, but the fetus was already a month along. A bitter smile twisted my lips. This whole sexless marriage thing had been her idea. She wouldn't let me touch her, wouldn't let us get closer than arm's length. Yet here she was, pregnant with a child. Turns out, the only person who can break the rules is the one who made them. They say patience is a virtue, but the more you hold back, the angrier you get. I've been so damn patient, and for what? For you to go and get pregnant by someone else. This was a line that couldn't be uncrossed. I started by mirroring Claire's phone, then I hired someone to look into her circle of friends and colleagues. The results came back quickly. The man who'd put the horns on my head was a history teacher at her high school. They'd barely interacted until a school debate, after which their relationship had taken off like a rocket. I looked over the file the private investigator had given me and opened the video of the debate. The topic was, can love and sex exist independently? Mark Thorne asked Ms. Sterling, would you say your parents were in love? Of course, Claire replied. Then if love and sex can be separated, Mark shot back, how, exactly, did you come into this world? The audience of students and faculty erupted in applause, clearly impressed by Mark's rhetorical cheap shot. Claire's eyes immediately reddened, because her parents were deceased. Mark's team won the debate, but he gave his prize, a gift certificate to a local bookstore, to Claire. Ms. Sterling, you're the most compelling debater I've ever seen, he said, laying it on thick. Thank you, Claire replied politely. Having made a good impression, Mark found her again the next day. Ms. Sterling, could I take you out to dinner? He asked, his voice dripping with sincerity. But Claire shut him down. No, I don't eat with men who aren't my husband. She turned to leave, but Mark grabbed her by the wrist. Seeing the look of disgust on her face, he quickly explained, Ms. Sterling, that's not what I meant. During the debate yesterday, I didn't know your parents had passed away. I offended their memory, and I'd like to buy you dinner as an apology. At that, Claire's expression softened. Sensing an opening, Mark pressed on. If you're not opposed, we could just grab something from the food trucks down the street. Please, just give me a chance to apologize properly. Seeing how earnest he seemed, and figuring that grabbing a bite from a food truck wouldn't take long, she agreed. As they were eating, Mark said, Ms. Sterling, I'm actually a huge admirer of your father's work. He pulled a book from his bag. The cover read, The Hidden Lore of the Pacific Northwest. My wife, who preached the virtues of a sexless marriage, was now falling for this guy. I've been reading this since I was in high school, Mark said. I had no idea the great historian Jonathan Sterling was your father. Claire looked at the worn-out cover of the book in his hands. It was clear he'd read it often. Mark continued, My favorite story is the one about the star-crossed lovers from the Willamette Valley legend. I read it a dozen times. I believe that some loves are just destined to be. Claire smiled faintly. I always prefer the chapter on the native myths of Mount Hood. They chatted and laughed, the distance between them shrinking with every word. But just as they were finishing their meal, a group of aggressive-looking guys swaggered over. Hey, gorgeous, why don't you come have a drink with us? One of them, covered in tattoos, sneered at Claire. He reached out and grabbed her arm. Claire struggled, her fists flailing uselessly against his bulk. That's when Mark grabbed a metal stool and swung it at the tattooed man. The group was bigger and stronger. They beat Mark to the ground in seconds, but he struggled back to his feet. He smashed a beer bottle on the edge of the table, holding the jagged glass neck out in front of him. Seeing how ready he was for a real fight, the thugs decided it wasn't worth it and backed off. Afterward, Claire helped Mark back to his apartment on campus and cleaned his wounds herself. Does it hurt? She asked, her eyes red. Mark just smiled and took her hand. It doesn't hurt. As long as you're okay. They could have killed me, and I wouldn't have cared. Claire's gaze flickered. Don't worry, she said. I'm calling the police. I'll make sure those men are arrested. No, don't. If you call the cops, everyone will know I lost a fight. He looked down, feigning shame, getting beaten up in front of a woman I admire. That's worse than death. Claire's hand, holding the cotton swab, froze mid-air. Realizing he'd misspoken, Mark started apologizing like a guilty child. I'm sorry, I just got carried away and said the wrong thing. His frantic movements pulled at the cuts on his back, and he cried out in pain. Claire, through her tears, finally laughed. All right, she chided gently. Now hold still while I put this on. Yes, ma'am, Mark said, giving her a mock salute. After that night, Claire's reservations about him completely vanished. Every day, while she tended to his fake injuries, Mark would tell her stories from her father's book. As they grew closer, he started bringing her flowers and showing up to sit in on the classes she taught. When Claire didn't refuse the flowers, Mark got bolder. One evening, while walking across the athletic field, he took her hand. Before they knew it, they were spending more and more time together, meeting up for lunch or going out after work for dinner or a movie. Claire, want to see a movie tonight? Mark asked one afternoon. Sure. Are we going back to that indie theater with the private booths? She replied with a smile. The last time, they'd seen Transformers. What would it be this time? While Claire was still wondering, Mark pulled up Titanic on the booking app, the full, uncut version. As Jack and Rose found their passion in the back of that car, Claire's nerves were stretched to their breaking point. She could feel the convictions of her marriage crumbling, piece by piece. Suddenly, Mark's arm was around her. He leaned in, his teeth grazing her earlobe. The heat of his breath washed over her last shred of resistance, turning her token struggles into surrender. The sound from the movie intertwined with Claire's soft gasps, and with a final, sharp cry in the darkness, her devotion to our sexless marriage was over. According to the PI's file, Claire let go of all inhibitions after that. The indie theater became their sanctuary. The school's athletic fields and the wooded trails behind the campus bore witness to their escalating passion. Even after learning she was pregnant, Claire continued to play the part of the devoted wife, her eyes still full of what I thought was love whenever she looked at me. One evening, as we were having dinner, her phone rang. I glanced over and saw the caller ID. Mark. A sharp pain lanced through my chest. I'm going to build a 65-page dossier and get your goddamn teaching license revoked, I thought. Claire answered the phone, murmured a few ahas, then turned to me. That was Sarah from the English department. She needs me to cover her evening study hall. I have to go. Okay, be safe on the road, I said. She grabbed her purse, gave me a kiss on the cheek, and left. A few minutes later, I was in my car, following her. She took an Uber to an apartment complex I knew was Mark's. As soon as they met, he pulled her into a hug. Claire, please, don't get rid of our baby, he pleaded. I have to. In a few months, it'll start to show. I can't let Ethan find out about us. Claire's voice was firm. Then what am I to you? Just a momentary lapse in judgment. Mark demanded, his voice cracking with emotion. Claire turned and hugged him back. I love you too. What Ethan and I have is pure platonic love. What you and I have is physical love. Then have the baby. I'll raise it. I swear I'll never interfere with your pure love, Mark insisted. For the first time, I heard real anger in Claire's voice. If you keep pushing this, then we're done. This is over. But Mark didn't back down. He grabbed her by the shoulders. Even if it's over, I want you to have this baby. You say you love me, so why would you destroy the one thing our love created? Their argument grew louder until they finally parted in anger. And I, hidden in the shadows, recorded every last word. Perfect, I thought. A few more pages for the dossier. When Claire came home, she composed herself and slipped into bed beside me. Lately, I'd noticed her desires had clearly grown. In her sleep, her slender, pale hands would wander over to my side of the bed, her body unconsciously pressing against mine. It made me sick. These were tricks she'd learned from another man, and now she was trying to use them on me. The next day, I told her I had to go on a work trip. I packed a suitcase and left. That night, a text came from an unknown number. Only I have ever seen Claire in all her glory. The text was attached to a video. In it, Claire was being taken by him, over and over. Mark's voice taunted, "Do you still think a sexless marriage can last?" Claire's broken voice replied, "You were right. When you truly love someone, you're willing to give them everything." Rage, white-hot and absolute, consumed me. That night, I called my secretary, Sabrina Vance. In the hotel room, I gripped her shoulders, my voice low and tight. I'm very, very angry right now. During my business trip, I didn't contact Claire once. An eye for an eye. You cheated and got pregnant, so me starting something with Sabrina is more than fair. Sabrina just smiled at me. What? Finally decided to stop holding back? You have no idea how funny it was, watching you look at me with all that desire but none of the nerve. I sighed. Yeah, well, I've been holding back for as long as I've been married. After the wedding, I had treated Claire like a piece of art, something to be looked at, maybe touched, but never truly possessed. I'm a normal man with normal needs. You can't spend your whole life sleeping next to a statue. I had to restrain myself at home, terrified that if I lost control and forced myself on her, she'd accuse me of marital rape. And I had to restrain myself at work, constantly fending off the temptations my secretary threw my way. And what did all that restraint get me? An ultrasound report for another man's child. I started organizing the files from the PI, adding my own recordings and the taunting text from Mark. I thought a 65-page dossier would be hard to compile, but once I started, I realized 65 pages wouldn't be nearly enough. The number of times they'd had their deep discussions at that indie theater alone would fill half of it. Once it was ready, I contacted a parent from one of Claire's classes, asking him to forward the file to the parent-teacher group chats and email lists when the time came. While I was preparing my little crusade for justice, Claire and Mark were having another explosive argument. She was on her way to the clinic when he stopped her. "This is my child. I have a right to defend his life." Claire shoved him away. "If you loved me, you would protect my dignity, not force me to have another man's child while I'm married." "Another man? So I'm just another man to you now? Was everything you said before, that you loved me, that you'd do anything for me, all lies?" He shot back, grabbing her by the shoulders. "If I have this baby, it's adultery. It's a moral failing. When the time is right, I'll have a baby for you, but not now." Claire was dead set on the abortion, but seeing he couldn't stop her, Mark played his trump card. "Claire, just come see one movie with me. If you still want to go through with it after the movie, I swear I won't stand in your way," he said. He took her to see Mr. Nobody, a film that explores the idea of children being the reincarnations of ancestors. The story was deeply moving and hit Claire right where she was most vulnerable, the pain of losing her parents 2 years prior. As she sobbed in the dark theater, Mark timed his move perfectly, wrapping his arms around her. "Claire, the reason I don't want you to get rid of the baby is because I love you, and I know how much you miss your parents," he whispered. "If you go through with this, you might be denying them the chance to find their way back to you." Overwhelmed with emotion, Claire wept. "I was wrong about you. I'll keep the baby." As Mark soothed her, stroking her back, a triumphant smirk spread across his face. With a baby in the picture, he thought, "There's no way you can escape my grasp." Over the next few weeks, Mark accompanied Claire to her prenatal checkups. He started sending me texts from a burner phone. "You've never even seen Claire at her most vulnerable, and I've already gotten her pregnant with my child. Our baby is perfectly healthy. Claire says after this one, she wants to have another for me. I was at your house today. I lay in your bed and felt the baby's heartbeat. Why aren't you responding? Don't you have any manners? Are you even a man? I'm provoking you like this, and you do nothing." It wasn't that I didn't respond. I didn't even look. After years of deprivation, I was busy making up for lost time with Sabrina. Lying in my arms, Sabrina murmured, "When are you going to marry me? I'm tired of being the secretary. I want to be the boss's wife." Her words made me laugh. A secretary who doesn't want to be the boss's wife isn't a good secretary, right? She pinched my nose. "You think I didn't notice you undressing me with your eyes every day? I've waited 3 years for you. You tell me if you should marry me or not." She paused, then added, "And you need to fight for the inheritance Claire's parents left her." That set off an alarm in my head. "How do you know she has an inheritance?" Sabrina waved a dismissive hand. "My sister's a lawyer. She's the one who drafted their will." She paused again. "Besides, that boyfriend of your wife's is bad news. He's almost certainly going after that money. If you don't believe me, have someone look into him." I did as she said, and had the PI dig into Mark Thorne's background. The findings were staggering. He had an older brother, Rick Thorne, who sold life insurance. Rick had been married 18 times, and each time, his bride was a woman who had recently received a massive insurance payout after the death of her parents. "So, it's a family business," I muttered to myself. Mark was clearly trying to follow in his brother's footsteps. Inside a dimly lit bar called the Velvet Rope, Mark and Rick were clinking glasses. "Mark, you've really outdone yourself," Rick said with a sigh of admiration. "To think you actually landed Claire Sterling, the untouchable Ice Queen. It took me 10 years and 18 wives to scrape together $1. 2 million, he continued. "And you, with one move, you're looking at over 10 million. Mark's face glowed with pride. "She doesn't want to divorce Ethan yet, but it's only a matter of time. She's carrying my kid, after all." "Incredible. You even managed to knock up the goddess of pure love herself. When you're rich, don't forget about me, little brother," Rick said. Mark took a sip of his drink. "Don't worry. Once Claire and I are married, her money is my money." Then he added, "But I need to find a way to provoke her husband a little more, speed this divorce along." While Mark was plotting how to provoke me, I was plotting how to uproot his entire family enterprise. "Sabrina, I said, here's $75,000. Have your sister contact all of Rick's ex-wives. It's time they filed a joint lawsuit against him for marriage fraud. Sabrina and I stayed out of town for nearly a month. When I flew back, Claire was at the airport to pick me up. To avoid any suspicion, Sabrina and I left the terminal at different times. But when I got to the parking garage, Mark Thorne was standing right next to Claire. He stepped forward proactively. Ethan, good to meet you. I'm a good friend of Claire's. She hasn't been feeling well lately, didn't feel up to driving, so she asked me to come with her. As he spoke, he surreptitiously slipped a USB drive into my hand. At his words, Claire subconsciously tried to suck in her stomach, terrified I would notice her baby bump. Faced with such a blatant provocation, anyone else might have exploded. But I felt nothing. Sabrina had drained me of every last drop of energy. I clapped Mark on the shoulder, my voice laced with mock admiration. I like your style. Cocky. It makes the game more interesting. Sensing the tension, Claire rushed forward and threw herself into my arms. It's been a month. You didn't even call. I missed you so much. She pulled me into the back seat of the car, settling into my lap. Mark drove, his eyes burning with resentment as he watched us in the rearview mirror. As we neared our house, I said casually, Claire, have you put on some weight recently? Your stomach is starting to show a little. Claire froze, then forced a laugh. Well, it's your fault for being away so long. There was no one to stop me from drinking all those milkshakes. Well, I'll have to keep a closer eye on you from now on, I said with a smile. I won't let that belly grow another millimeter. Then, I pretended to take a phone call. Hey, yeah, right now? Okay. I hung up and turned to Claire. Something came up at the office. I won't be coming home tonight. The color drained from her face. My cold indifference sent her into a panic. Back in my office, I plugged in the USB drive Mark had given me and added its contents to the dossier. It was a video of Mark and Claire in our marital bedroom. Claire was wearing her wedding dress as Mark slipped her wedding ring off her finger and replaced it with another one. From now on, at school, you were the ring I gave you, he commanded. Claire just nodded shyly. The wedding photos on the wall had been replaced with pictures of her and Mark. The man had a flair for the dramatic. I sent the complete dossier on Claire and Mark to the school district's official complaint inbox. Then, I used a few personal connections to make sure it was expedited. Soon enough, a staff member called me back. Hello, Mr. Cole. We've received your complaint. We will verify the information as soon as possible. If I don't get a satisfactory response, I said coolly, I will release these materials online and let the public monitor your work. There was a pause on the other end. Rest assured, Mr. Cole, we will handle this with the utmost urgency. While Claire was still worrying about her growing belly, the school district launched its investigation. She and Mark were summoned to the principal's office. Principal Davis got straight to the point. A complaint has been filed accusing you both of moral misconduct and of destroying a marriage. Is this true? Claire immediately denied it. That's a disgusting slander. Mark and I are just colleagues. Nothing more. Seeing Claire's firm denial, Principal Davis felt a wave of relief. It seemed the complaint was just a baseless rumor after all. But then he noticed Mark was completely silent. Mr. Thorne, why aren't you saying anything? Claire shot Mark a desperate look, but he ignored her. Well, we didn't engage in moral misconduct. We're genuinely in love. Davis slammed his hand on the desk. She's a married woman. What the hell kind of love is that? Claire spun on Mark. What are you talking about? Mark just shook his head. Claire, who else could have reported us but Ethan? He already knows everything. Why are you still pretending? He looked at her with what he probably thought was romantic intensity. Love is about defying convention and running toward each other. Bravely cut ties with the past and run toward the future with me. The blood drained from Claire's face. He knows? How could he know? Mark stepped forward and wrapped an arm around her, turning to face the principal. Mr. Davis, the complaint is true. Do what you have to do. No one is going to tear us apart. Davis looked apoplectic. I've never met such a shameless individual. Fine. You can wait for your termination notice and the revocation of your teaching license. Claire had to be helped out of the office by Mark. He wore a smug, victorious expression. Once I marry her and her millions, who gives a damn about being a teacher? He thought. Claire, it's come to this. We have to face it, he said softly. We have a child on the way, and Ethan knows everything. Just divorce him. After Mark's lengthy persuasion, Claire's already chaotic mind became even more jumbled. But given the circumstances, divorce seemed like the only path left. The news of my complaint against them began to spread through the faculty. Soon after, the parent I'd contacted started disseminating the information through the class group chats. At school, Claire was met with whispers and pointed stares. She started wearing a mask just to leave the house. She called me, begging me to withdraw the complaint, but every time I saw her name on the screen, I declined to call and sent a text back. Do not contact me unless it's about the divorce. When she saw the message, she burst into tears. It was only then that she finally realized how foolish she had been. Oh God, I actually thought I could hide this from him forever. But he knew everything. After composing herself, she texted me back. Ethan, I agree to a divorce. Can we meet tonight to talk? I agreed. Claire chose the location, Serendipity Brews, the coffee shop where we first met. We'd been set up on a blind date, right here in this cafe. The first time I saw her, she was wearing a simple white dress, exuding a quiet, elegant grace, like a heroine from a classic black and white film. A woman like this needs a blind date? I had thought, stunned. Ethan, she had asked, speaking first. I just stared at her exquisite face, so nervous I could only manage a nod. I'll get right to it, she said. Are you open to a sexless marriage? At the time, I didn't even fully understand what that meant. I just said, I am. I'll accept anything about you. She smiled, and I smiled back like an idiot. And just like that, we were together. We went shopping, saw movies, went to concerts. I remember standing in a crowd, watching the pop star Celeste sing her hit ballad, Looks Like My Tenderness. Claire had turned to me, her eyes shining with aspiration. Celeste is my idol. She and her husband have a sexless marriage too. And she looked at me. Ethan, do you have the confidence to walk this pure path with me forever? I had shouted over the music. I do. But ideals are one thing, and reality is another. Just a year later, Celeste's husband divorced her. The reason? He couldn't take it anymore. Looking back, I guess I was pretty impressive. I lasted 3 years. Ethan, do you have the confidence to walk this pure path with me forever? Claire said now, her voice a near-perfect echo of that first meeting. I roll my eyes. You're pregnant with another man's child. Don't talk to me about purity. She lowered her head. She knew it was impossible, but she'd wanted to try. What if I'd said yes? We sat in silence for a few seconds before she finally spoke again. Ethan, here are the divorce papers. I was the one who cheated. I'm leaving all the assets to you. I turned my head away as I took the documents from her. Just like her idols, our sexless marriage had finally reached its inevitable end. The agreement was meticulously detailed, with every asset listed clearly. I was stunned by the number of zeros next to the total distributable assets. I had no idea Claire was this wealthy. Sabrina had mentioned her parents' inheritance, but I'd figured it was $1 million or $2 million at most. I never imagined it was over $20 million. You really don't have to. I began trying to explain, but she cut me off, her voice thick with tears. Tomorrow morning, 9 a.m. at City Hall. With that, she ran out of the coffee shop, sobbing. I stared after her, dumbfounded, and finished the sentence I'd started. You really don't have to give me all the money. It's not like I'm some kind of saint either. Looking back on our marriage, if she hadn't cheated, I would have been the one to ask for a divorce eventually. I was near my breaking point, too, so I didn't feel she owed me everything. 3 years of celibacy for a $20 million payout. What man wouldn't kill for a deal like that? Just then my phone buzzed. Another text from the parasite, Mark Thorne. Claire has promised herself to me for life. I suggest you don't cling to her. Even a saint would have trouble with the kind of baggage you're bringing. I texted back. Don't get cocky. Reading his message, all I felt was a profound sense of exhaustion. I had almost forgotten about this leech. Fine. In that case, I'll gladly accept the $20 million. The next morning, I arrived at the county clerk's office early. When Claire showed up, Mark was with her. Claire's pregnant, so I came along to support her, he explained, draping his arm around her, his hand rubbing her stomach possessively. I ignored his pathetic display and walked inside. Guided by a clerk, we processed the paperwork quickly. When they handed me the final divorce decree, I felt like I'd won the lottery. Claire looked at the document in disbelief. Wait, isn't there supposed to be a cooling-off period? The clerk shot her a sideways glance. We got a bunch of complaints saying if divorce has a cooling-off period, marriage should too. We got tired of the hassle, so we just got rid of the divorce one. Is that a nationwide change, or just this office? Is it even legal? Claire pressed. The clerk's patience wore thin. Look, lady, if you don't want to get divorced, the remarriage window is right over there. Stop holding up the line. I took my decree and walked straight out of the building. Sabrina was already waiting by the curb in a black Maybach. As I walked toward her, Claire ran up and grabbed my arm. Ethan, you're a good man. Please be happy. Before I could answer, Sabrina got out of the car. He will be, she said, looking Claire up and down. I'll take good care of him. You can go now. With that, we got in the car and drove off, leaving Claire and Mark in a cloud of exhaust. Mark was ecstatic, his mind filled with visions of Claire's money. $20 million. It's finally mine. With my divorce finalized, the school district followed up on my complaint. In the principal's office, Mark stood tall and declared self-righteously, "There's nothing left to investigate. It was I who seduced Claire. It was I who pursued her, knowing full well she was married." He spread his arms wide. "It was all my fault. She's innocent. Go on. Fire me. Revoke my license." The district official was practically speechless with rage. "Fine. It would be inhumane of me not to grant your wish." In the end, Claire received a 1-month suspension. Mark, as he wished, was fired, had his teaching license permanently revoked, and was barred from ever working in education again. He couldn't have cared less. I'm about to be a multimillionaire who needs a teacher's salary of a few thousand a month. That very day, he proposed to Claire, "My love, I will bear all the sin. I will endure all the scorn. As long as I can marry you, I would gladly lose everything else." Claire gazed at his deeply passionate face, her heart overflowing with emotion. She had made the right choice. His love for me is so fierce, she thought. I wasn't wrong about him. As they kissed, sealing their lifelong vow, Mark posted a 20-photo celebratory slideshow on his Instagram. When his brother Rick saw it, he called immediately, "Little brother, I'm in deep trouble. All those women I got money from, they've teamed up and are suing me for marriage fraud." His voice was frantic. "If I don't pay them back, their lawyer says I'm going to prison for a long, long time." Mark scoffed. This pathetic brother of his, 18 scams just to get $1. $2 million. He, Mark Thorne, was about to land a fortune worth at least $10 million. "Calm down, bro, it's only $1. $2 million. Liquidate all your assets. Cover what you can. I'll put the rest on my credit cards and pay it off for you," Mark said confidently. Rick scraped together about $900,000 by selling everything he owned and borrowing from friends. Mark sold his own apartment to cover the remaining $300,000. To get his hands on Claire's money faster, Mark then took out a $150,000 personal loan for the wedding. As an unemployed man, no legitimate bank would give him that kind of money. So I had someone set up a predatory online lending company just for him. The interest rate was set at the absolute legal maximum. Mark would be paying back over $20,000 a year in interest alone. A $150,000 wedding is an incredibly extravagant affair, far more luxurious than the simple ceremony Claire and I had. They opted for a classic, high-end theme, the ceremony both beautiful and solemn. Claire walked down the aisle, a delicate beaded veil obscuring her downcast eyes. Mark was beaming, his face flushed with triumph as he watched his bride approach. "She's a walking, talking jackpot," he thought. "Come on, come to me." The walk from the door to the altar was only 50 feet, but for Mark, it felt like the culmination of a lifetime of waiting. She finally stood before him. As the officiant said, "You may now lift the veil," Claire slowly, deliberately raised the fine lace from her face. Just as the ceremony was about to conclude, Mark's brother, Rick, asked tentatively, "Claire, my dear, Mark has given up everything for you. Shouldn't you reciprocate a little with the wedding gifts?" Claire's lips curved into a small smile. "It's all right there." Mark and Rick followed her finger to a large table covered by a red satin cloth. The sheer size of it. If it was all cash, it had to be at least $1 million. Rick, giddy as a child, yanked the cloth away. Underneath were stacks and stacks of books. He looked closer. A walking tour of the American constellation, a history of American astronomy, ancient celestial cartography, the stars and the humanities. Mark was stunned. "Claire, what is this?" "You said you loved books about the stars," she said with a bright smile. "These were my father's entire collection. I'm giving them to you as a wedding gift." Mark's face turned the color of raw liver. The only book he'd ever read on the subject was The Hidden Lore of the Pacific Northwest, and even that he'd only skimmed to find lines to use on her. Rick wasn't giving up. "Claire, love isn't a one-way street. It's a partnership. Mark bankrupted himself for you. The least you could do is give back a few $100,000. Now Claire's expression soured. "Where would I get that kind of money?" Seeing her play dumb, Rick lost his temper. "Don't play games with us, Claire. Your parents bought a policy from my insurance company. After they died, we paid out a $5 million claim to you, and they were accomplished academics. Their estate must have been worth a fortune. A few $100,000 is pocket change for you." Mark jumped in to back him up. "Claire, my brother is speaking for my family. I'm not interested in your money, but I expect you to respect them." Panicked, Claire finally confessed. "But to be with you, I committed adultery. According to my divorce agreement with Ethan, I gave him all the assets." The Thorne brothers froze as if they'd been turned to stone. The air in the room went still. Mark felt like the world's biggest fool. He had schemed and manipulated for so long. only to scheme himself into oblivion. A sharp smack echoed through the hall. Mark had slapped Claire across the face. "You bitch. You and Ethan worked together to screw me over, didn't you?" Claire was stunned, her eyes wide with fear. "Mark, what's wrong with you?" He grabbed her by the collar of her wedding dress. "Tell me, did you give the money to Ethan on purpose?" Tears streamed down her face. "So, you were only with me for the money?" Mark let go, his voice dripping with contempt. "Not just for the money. You were a good time, too. But is any lay worth $20 million? Then what you said about loving me, fighting those thugs for me, was that all fake, too?" she sobbed. Mark pointed a thumb toward the back of the reception hall. "See those guys at that table over there? Those are the thugs I fought. They're my buddies. It was all an act, you idiot." Claire broke down completely. "How could you do this to me? I'm pregnant with your child." But even the mention of the baby couldn't calm him. He grabbed a handful of her hair. "Get the hell out of here and go get the money from Ethan. If you don't come back with it, I'll beat you to death." Crying hysterically, Claire found me. I was shocked by the red handprint blooming on her cheek. I knew Mark would turn on her eventually, but I never imagined he'd do it on their wedding day. "Ethan, can you lend me some money?" she wept. Seeing her in such a pathetic state, and considering she had given me a fortune, I thought that maybe giving her a little something wouldn't hurt. But just then, Sabrina burst out of the house, pointing a finger at Claire. "Ethan is my husband now. His money is my money. If you need cash, go ask your new husband. Stop harassing us." The cold, cruel words left Claire speechless. She could only turn and leave, her sobs echoing in the quiet street. To pay back the marriage fraud settlement, Rick had borrowed heavily. A month had now passed, and I instructed the online lending platform to begin collections. Rick, of course, had no money to repay the loan. He had to beg Mark for help. But Mark was unemployed, his teaching license was gone. Where was he supposed to get the money? The two of them started taking out new loans to pay off the old ones, sinking deeper and deeper into debt. Mark's daily rage turned into a ritual of beating Claire. She was covered in bruises, her face swollen. He beat her so badly that she miscarried the baby. Her life was a living hell. As the debt grew, the collectors started getting physical with the Thorne brothers. They were beaten regularly, a small beating every 3 days, a major one every 5. Eventually, they were forced to go into hiding. I hired a lawyer to help Claire sue Mark for domestic abuse. He was ultimately convicted of aggravated assault for beating his wife and causing the miscarriage and was sentenced to 5 years in prison. Rick, hounded by creditors, threw himself off a bridge. After Claire had recovered physically, she came to find me, wearing a simple white dress. I had to admit, she was still beautiful, especially in that dress. It reminded me of the day we first met. She looked at me earnestly. "Ethan, can we get back together? I know I made a mistake, but can't you just forgive me this one time?" Her voice was pleading. "Look, I was willing to give you all my assets in the divorce. That proves I truly love you. We can remarry, be a normal couple. I'll have children for you. I'll be a good wife." I hesitated for a second, trying to think of the kindest way to refuse. She had just been through a horrible trauma. I didn't want to be cruel. But in that moment of hesitation, Sabrina stepped up and slapped me hard across the face. The smack was loud and sharp. Sabrina's voice was crystal clear. "Haven't you worn the cuckold hat long enough? Why aren't you rejecting her? Are you saving it to wear for New Year's?" I couldn't help but laugh. Okay, I said, turning to her. "It's only you. I don't love anyone but you."